Hello, fellow horror fiends, and welcome to The Horror Within Me, a podcast dedicated to the world of horror. Join us each week as our host explores a new, horrifying topic from the many realms of horror, such as film, television, and more, and returns to tell us his terrifying revelations. So sit back, relax, and get ready to face the horrors within.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another spooky Sunday episode of The Horror Within Me. I am your host, Eric, and it is time for another addition to the September School Special Series. Last week, we started the series off strong with A Nightmare on Elm Street and talking about the parents of Elm Street, which I had a lot of fun doing, and many people that I talked to and I shared clips on social media agreed and liked my point of view, so that was super awesome. This week's topic, we're going to switch it up a little bit with it's not going to be the entire series, it'll be one film entry and leading around relationships and trusting and scars and just that kind of thing that goes on in high school with obviously a twist of horror. And this week's movie entry is Scream, the original 1996 Scream, not the remake or the reboot or whatever you want to call it, the one that just came out in 2022. And we're going to center it around Sidney and her relationship with Billy, but also Billy and Stu's relationship. We're going to digest and dissect that from my point of view and what I can take from like analyzing the situations. So I'm very excited to do that with you all. But before we get into that dynamic, we're going to jump into some things going on in the horror world. A few new pictures of the new Hellraiser has emerged with Jamie Clayton's character and the Pinhead, as Pinhead, and it looks fucking amazing. I can't wait to see the Hulu version of Hellraiser. I'm very, very intrigued and excited. I've only seen the original Hellraiser once, I know. So I'm not like a diehard fan of the Hellraiser franchise, but I know that it's iconic and I would like to see them all, but I'm very interested to see, from what I'm reading, the different take that they're going to do based off of the original work that it was inspired by. So that's something to look forward to in a couple weeks. But another thing that we have, and it's ramping up more and more, and I talked about it a couple times on TikTok yesterday too, or the day before, is Halloween Ends. Marketing is going. We got another iconic photo from the set with Michael and Laurie's battle, which seems to be the highlight of the marketing mostly, is the battle between Michael and Laurie, which is fine because we know there's going to be an epic battle. So showing clips or little photo ops isn't taking away from the movie as a whole, which is what I think that they're doing, which is nice. But the photo was a picture of Michael trying to stab Laurie with a big knitting needle, which is a nod to the 1978 Halloween when Michael first gets into the Doyle house and Laurie stabs him in the neck with the knitting needle. We see, that's so exciting to me because it's like paying attention to detail on how, that it's going to be. I made a joke. I think I captioned my video as, if Michael didn't remember her in the previous film, he knows who she is now to get some revenge, but I don't know if he really knows that that's his the getaway victim from 1978. I'm sure he knows who she is from 4 years ago with, the house and all that, because it was only 4 years, but I'm not sure if he knows it's the same woman from 44 years ago, but it's fun to play around with. And after I was done with the photo TikTok, and I was, after done work and everything, and I looked, just scrolling through TikTok on my regular feed, somebody posted that there was a TV spot for Halloween Ends, but it wasn't in English. I don't know what, I think it was Spanish or something, that it was, they did a TV spot, 28-second TV spot, and I watched it, and it was super cool. Some of the same footage, a lot of new footage, but without giving anything away. I really think there's a really cool shot of Allison shutting like a door, and there's a mirror with Michael standing by and her screaming at something else. I'm not sure. They're keeping a lot a lot of it close to the chest, which is super cool. I'm not sure if we're gonna get a extended trailer or not at this point. We're looking at a little over a month away before the release. I haven't seen an American TV spot yet, but the marketing is ramping up. So that's fun in the horror world, you know. And this month, we also get Hocus Pocus 2, which isn't, you know, it is in the horror world. It's not your adult horror, but you know, I know 1993, I was about 7, so Hocus Pocus is a major part of my life. And I know many of you, whether old or new or whatever the case is, Hocus Pocus is a classic. The witches, the Sanderson sisters is iconic, and I can't wait to see the storyline that they do with this new film. Basically, I think it's revolving around a new set of children, one with witching, like witch powers or something along the lines. And I hear there's also going to be a backstory of how the Sanderson sisters became the Sanderson sisters. So I'm looking forward to that. I read an article on why they didn't bring back the original cast of children that were in Hocus Pocus, and it's something along the lines of they didn't want to do just a cameo because it wouldn't satisfy, you know, the nostalgic audience, who people like me that grew up watching the original, and they couldn't really find a place for them any further in the new story, which is why they didn't bring them back. So, I mean, with that explanation, I'm guessing I'm okay with it. I I I don't know. We shall see. The best thing that we know is that the original Sanders sisters are the ones reprising their roles. So that's the most that, you know, fun that we can think and hope for at this point. Um, you know, because they can really go left or right. You know, it could go really wrong. So I'm hoping that it's a new fun movie that feeds the nostalgia and gives us old fans something really exciting and fresh that we love and add to our collection, but also something really new and fresh for new generations to fall in love with and maybe go back and revisit the first one just to, you know, reintroduce the world to these iconic, you know, characters. So I'm hoping for that. Speaking of, the backtrack real quick for Halloween Ends, I forgot to mention too that Trick or Treat Studios is releasing their Ends mask October 15th, I believe, and they released the footage of the pictures of it yesterday, and it is fucking creepy. It's got the mold on the side of where it was burnt and where Karen shot him in the first one. It's kind of moldy and more weathered, and I love the progression of the masks. I think that they're subtle changes, but they're realistic changes based off of studies of how masks react to the situations that they've been in and holding up over the last 44 years. So check that out if you're into collecting masks, especially the Michael Myers mask, which is I am. I only have Kills and Halloween 2. I still need so many more, and that's expensive. But definitely on my list of things to grab. And other than that, I think that's it for Halloween news or horror related news that I can think of off the top of my head. Obviously, there's a bunch of new stuff coming out and spooky season right now with so much in September and October to look forward to that I think we've covered some of it already, but my mind wanders and I might forget. So stay tuned on the TikToks as well for those updates. But other than that, we're going to jump now into this week's episode subject, which I mentioned in the beginning is all about the 1996 Scream movie and the relationship between Sidney and Billy Loomis and Billy and Stu. Now, spoiler alert, if you have not seen the original Scream movie from 1996 at this point, you know how I feel about that. There's going to be spoilers because this isn't a movie review where I'm trying to get people to watch a movie. This is a dissection where we talk about things in the movie and try to rationalize or analyze character relationships within that world. So everyone that knows Scream knows that we meet young Sidney Prescott and her boyfriend Billy Loomis very early on, and it's a very quick dynamic that we realize that we find out her mother was raped and murdered apparently by Cotton Weary, and that has drastically changed her life for the following year because it's when we start the movie, it's almost a year since her mother's murder. So Sydney had to go through a lot. She went through trial. She went through a lot of stuff, and that has changed her relationship with men, especially her boyfriend Billy, and not very sexual, which understandable. He seems like a nice guy that he's like trying to do, trying to have sex, but like also being respectful, but like he's also kind of creepy. And in the beginning scene when he sneaks up to her bedroom, it's he said something along the lines like, I was watching The Exorcist and it made me think of you. And I'm like, what the fuck? That's a terrible thing to say to somebody, especially your girlfriend. And she's like, wow. And he's like, no, all the good parts were cut out because it was made for TV, which I remember watching made for TV movies. I refuse to do that nowadays in the world of streaming. I'll never watch a horror movie, a rated R movie on cable. Never. But it's like, the mind thing that he's saying to her, like, oh, he's unhappy, which is fine, but then leave. But we know why he didn't and what he was doing. Turns out that he was a psychopath and one of the killers in the original Scream, and actually the one that killed her mother and set up Cotton Weary. So thinking about the rules of horror, right? They say it in the movie with Randy. Never, you have to be a virgin. So Sidney was a virgin. And throughout the movie, Billy, she thinks he's the killer. She doesn't think he's the killer. She's very mind fucked. This guy's playing so many games with her. And then she feels bad. So they're at this party and she's like, you know what? I'm ready to have sex with you, which I thought was an interesting character choice for her. Given that she's being pursued. Maybe it's because like she's being pursued and she thought it was him, but then she realized it wasn't him and that he's really there to protect her and that she really just wanted to do this. But the part that interests me, that I always like, I'm so curious on other people's opinions because I don't know who else to talk to about this, is after they have sex, she like starts to think and says something like, who'd you call? When you get one phone call. And he's like, oh, I called my dad. And she's like, no, the sheriff called your dad. And he's like, you don't still think it's me? She's like, no. But clearly, like, she's starting to think about it being him again and piecing these together. And I'm thinking, if that can't be a new thought, right? And if you thought that he was the killer and still had your doubts that he was innocent, you still made that choice to lose your virginity to him. Which is very unique in a way that you think of these teenagers back in the times. This is the 90s. Not just in the 90s, but teenagers in general. She's 16, 17-year-old, 17, 18-year-old, I don't know. Girl in school and the pressures of high school and virginity and sex and drugs and partying is all very real. And then you throw in the killing, which wouldn't be a horror movie without it. But I wonder if, taking from the beginning with his commentary, like all the good stuff was cut out and he, talks to her, the way that he manipulates her into this position of not trusting him because he slipped up with dropping the phone, to gaining her trust back so quickly, to be staged, to be attacked and murdered by the second killer, which we didn't know there was two killers until like a little bit later, is all very interesting. And it makes you think about, look back when you were in high school and or your first relationship, because I know my first relationship was a very long relationship for me. After I came out of the closet, my first real relationship, I met my ex when I was about 19 and we split when I was 29, and it was very tragic and sudden ending. We were married, but my point being is that the manipulation is real. And the mind fuck is real. And psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists are very good at getting what they want and believe, and getting people to believe what they want. Even like, think about it. We're gonna move on from Sidney and Billy to Billy and Stu. So Stu's Billy's best friend. And what is dark, and the second killer, and what is so dark about the entire dynamic between Billy and Stu is Stu's involvement in the murders. So let's take a step back, right? Billy went a little psychotic. His mom abandoned him because his father was having an affair with Sidney's mother. So he snaps, kills, Sidney's mom, and sets up Cotton Weary, right? And then coming up on a year, goes on a fucking massive killing spree because, movies or whatever the hell he tried to say it was for. And then wants to set up Sidney's dad as he really just wants to destroy the Prescott family. he's dating Sidney. I don't know how long they were dating before the mom's murder, but it couldn't have been too long. So the thing is that Billy, psychotic and all, had real motive, whereas Stu was just along for fun. Do you know what I mean? He did it because Billy asked him to do it. And that's a little more scary than someone like being wronged and snapping. What is Stu's excuse? A high school goofball who decides to not only did it kill his peers, and do this with his best friend. Like, what was that relationship before we meet them when we meet them in Scream? Because Stu looked like he came from a good house, like he didn't have a lot of struggle, so I think he thought it was like he had fun doing that. He and I think, that goes back to what I mean with the mind control of a narcissist and a psychopath and a sociopath like Billy Loomis was. He got, even though he was clearly a fucking a suspect, like, especially being at the house and dropping the phone, like he was very believable to say that he didn't do it. He went to great lengths to prove that he was innocent and got released. Knew, all the right things to do just to fuck with the minds of people he's like, let me make myself a suspect, prove that I wasn't, and then they'll be off of my trail. Like, get them in and get them out, including Sidney. But Stu was never a suspect. He never was a suspect. Flew under the radar. He was the goofy, weird sidekick to Billy Loomis, but it didn't even make sense. Their friendship was so different. Like, their personalities were so different. And I thought that was that was very interesting when you look at high school. Is you hear about these things happening in real life too. You hear about these killer couples, like you've watched the ID channel, the Oxygen channel, whatever, the true crime. You listen to podcasts, because a lot of horror fans are true crime fans. I'm a true crime fan. And you hear about these couples that, I don't think that so-and-so would have done this if it weren't for, people get charged with murder who never are even at the scene when the murder occurs, simply by persuasion, manipulation, and getting someone to do their bidding. And that is what Billy Loomis does to Stu. He manipulates this. I want to know how. I'm so intrigued to know how Billy starts the process of grooming Stu into the point where he's like, let's go on a killing spree. I got this cool costume, and we're gonna start with, Casey Becker. We're gonna call her and play around and kill her and her boyfriend. Like, I want to know how the fuck that started for these high school kids. Like, let's get realistic again. These are high school kids in the movie, right? We're not talking about adults, even though it doesn't make much of a difference. But like, sometimes you think of an adult like, oh my god, they went to school, they're very smart, they are calculated, they you don't associate that with high school kids, especially high school boys, right? They're usually not long-term thinkers. They're reactive, which in Stu is kind of reactive, but Billy is calculated. He had an entire plan from A to B. And not only was he able to just kill Sidney's mother and set someone up who did get convicted and sent to jail for her murder, he was able to plan out the following year's series of murders with his best friend and get ready and figure out an entire premeditated. I'm sure they had everyone on the list on how that was going to be. I think that is terrifying. I think that's what people don't realize. Like, Scream is such a fun movie, and it is. But let's dig beneath the surface level to what it really is. That's terrifying. How many of us, are around? Like, Scream is like the ultimate whodunit film series. I love everything about it. I am interested to see Scream 6 without the character of Sidney Prescott. Hopefully it does justice to the franchise. If not, it might be the last entry. But I don't want to get too far into that. But Sidney, Sidney Prescott in Scream 1 is where her story begins to where we last see her in Scream 5. There's a whole story arc building, and it all starts with Billy Loomis. He started this chain of events. He started in her head, fucked her head up, as a kid. And so Sidney and Stu, everyone being manipulated by Billy Loomis. And I don't think there was anyone who really called too much bullshit on him. Maybe Tatum, which I love the character of Tatum, and her death is one of the most inventive, iconic death scenes I think in horror movie history. It's just really out of the box, and I did a TikTok with Sydney's reaction to it a couple days ago too. When you pay attention to, let's think about it for a second. Like Wes Craven is very good. This is another Wes Craven film, which we didn't mention last week. We did a Nightmare on Elm Street series, which was created by Wes Craven, and now Scream with the Wes Craven. And he's amazing at creating these in-depth relationships and in-depth characters. They're not just characters on a screen without any kind of backstory. Even if you don't get the whole backstory, things like I'm having this discussion with you guys right now about Billy's relationship with Stu, which we never really get to see anything about. But we can sit here and speculate based off of prior knowledge from other medias how that probably went down and how he got him on board to do it. Same thing with Sidney. He knew keywords for, things to say that will spark little things in her brain that will make her doubt, and he knew that her feelings for him were real, and so he knew how to play that to where he would kind of get what he wants. And I feel like it was like a six-side mission of this is where the high school boy comes in, like the six-side mission to like not only, kill her, but I'm gonna be the one that like defiles and like takes her virginity. And then after that, she's going to know that I'm the one that murdered her mother and all these people, and then going to kill you and set your father up, and he's going to, and kill him. Like, what an ultimate fuck you moment for Billy Loomis, you know what I mean? Thankfully, because, you learn that he wasn't faithful to Sidney, and why would he be? He's a psychopath who was just trying to kill her. Because clearly he had Sam, which we find out about in the latest Scream, that he had a daughter with somebody that they went to high school with. So he was clearly sleeping with someone else, multiple people, I'm sure, during those events. That was still him being a high school kid. But then he got this other side of him, which was this cold, calculated, manipulative person that you can't put in a classification of a boy. You have to only put it in a classification as a psychopath. And I don't think psychopaths have ages. You can't sit there, a psychopath that's 7 years old, 12, 17, 42. They're all very much the same in my eyes. If you think about the different movies and how they're portrayed, they're not, it's textbook. So, a tale of caution, as if you will, for anyone out there in brand new relationships or anything, not to break your trust issues, but if we've learned anything from horror movies, it's little tips that we have to keep with us. The one that we should take away from Scream is really, really, really trust your intuition and your instincts. We can see that Sidney, we can watch on screen how she's being manipulated, and we have to pay attention that people in our lives are not doing the same. I am living proof that it is easy to be manipulated. Like I said, my ex, I was mind fucked for a very long time. We're going on many years that we have split, and there's still things that I struggle with that I have to remind myself weren't me, it was really him. So that's what I mean. These real life situations are a part of, cinema, but we can take so much from it. So watch your children too. If you're listeners and you have kids in high school, pay attention to their friends. If someone seems troubled, if your kid seems troubled, pay attention, talk it out. These are things that it's important as adults and parents that we pay attention, because Billy Loomis was a troubled kid. Because clearly nothing was done for him after his mother abandoned them. And he wasn't abandoned at like 10. He was abandoned like a teenager. And the only person he had to blame was Sidney's mother, and clearly the boy went through a psychotic snap, and it's not something that I'm sure he wasn't that way. There was something that unlocked that inside him, so there has to have been some sort of what am I thinking, sign that Billy was different after, and I think that the people and adults and his father mostly always just say, and they say the infamous things like, oh, well, that's understandable because X, Y, and Z happened to them. We can't justify and understandably say things about people and then not and think that it's just something that they need to go through on their own. People should be checking in on people to avoid things like this. Now, like I said, this is a little deep. We jump in and out of the movie and in reality, but that's the whole point of the September school specials, right? Is to take a beloved horror franchise or horror movie that we all think is really fun and dissect it and see what we can learn and apply the lessons and different parts of it into our own lives, right? So, like I said, with the parents, the kids not being paid attention to in Elm Street, as well as, not, even in Scream, there's never really a lot of parents, right? Sidney's dad was wonderful, but then he was like going out of town and he had to do work on business, and like these kids are always left the hell at home. I guess this is something that's normal with people with money, I guess. I don't know. I would never feel comfortable doing that, but you gotta do what you gotta do. That's for another episode, but that is my lesson to you all on this week's episode of The Horror Within Me for the September school special featuring Scream characters Sidney, Stu, and Billy. Raise strong kids. Sidney turned out really good, but she was manipulated into a lot of things from her boyfriend, and Stu was the perfect victim to Billy. I don't believe he was going to ever keep Stu alive. Perfect victim to manipulate as a partner of crime. So if anything else, like I said, if something seems fishy, it probably is. If something seems off, it probably is. So pay attention to the signs. But that concludes this week's episode of The Horror Within Me. I'm having so much fun with this podcast, and we know, before I go, just want to remind everyone that the t-shirts and hoodies for The Horror Within Me are now available for pre-order on the Horror Within Me website under the merchandise tab. There are different sizes and prices on there, as well as a picture of what the shirt and hoodie look like. So show your support for the show, place an order. In the coming weeks, we will be ending the pre-order, and we will send information via email on how to make your purchase and when you can expect to get your item. So that's super fun. As well as we now have an official Horror Within Me drink under the Spooky Shakers. So go and check that out. Super fun drink, and I think it's an easy one. That's a quick, easy fix into a mocktail, as well as another one that's a Stay Spooky spiked cider, which I personally love. So check them out. Tomorrow I will be doing a photo shoot with Jenny and my husband for the Spooky Shakers to get onto the website so you can get a visual of what it looks like, just for a little bit more fun. And don't forget that in the next few weeks, the special guest interview episode is going to be airing on October 2nd, so we will be announcing the guest very, very soon, if not next week, the following week. So definitely stay tuned to see who the special interview is with, because I love it so much. I think you're going to really enjoy that episode to kick off the Halloween month. So that is it. And as always, rate, review The Horror Within Me on wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever the case may be. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with more Horror Within Me content. And that is all. Stay safe, and more importantly, stay spooky.